Hi, so today we're going to talk about a yarn substitution and kind of how I decided what yarn to use for one of the winter patterns. I'm going to try to change it up a little bit in the winter so that there's a little bit more visibility into what I'm doing. I kind of tried to churn them out for the fall, and I wanted to switch up how I'm posting this stuff. So the first winter pattern is going to be this granny square dress. And I know this is in black and white, but the colors, if you were to look at the listing, which this was purchased from the Vintage Beso Etsy shop. And also I noticed that Vintage Beso, I think recently created a website. So she has a website for this, and I think the same patterns are on there, or at least in the process of getting on there. And I will share all that information. But in her listing, you can see the colors. I just printed out black and white, but these squares are colors like a purple, a little mint green, a peach, very pretty colors. And then this is like a cream. Oops, the top of the dress is a cream. So if you want to crochet along with this, which is I'm hoping that somebody decides to, this is called the Granny Square dress, and I purchased it from the Vintage Beso Etsy shop for $1.05. Can't beat that price because that's a cheap pattern. So let's talk about the yarn and how I decided to substitute this yarn. If you happen to see a YouTube video that I posted like maybe a week ago, I did an unboxing for Lion Brand, and I was kind of going through how much I was excited about this yarn. But I wanted to hop on here and just give an explanation as to why I chose that yarn. And this has been a learning process for me. So I'm just trying to share what I've learned so far and just be a little bit more, transparent with how I'm deciding what yarns I'm using. So let's go into the yarn that's suggested for this pattern. The pattern suggests a yarn called Spinnerin Marvel Twist Wash Fit yarn, or Germantown Deluxe or Deluxe Knitting Worsted. I didn't go into those extra ones. I started searching Spinnerin Marvel Twist Wash Fit yarn. So if you've ever tried to substitute yarn, perhaps you already know this, but Ravelry has like a yarn directory. So it'll tell you all this information about a yarn, if it's discontinued, when it was discontinued, which is really helpful when you're trying to decide what you need, what type of yarn you need, because you can do swatches and still try to find it. If you're not 100% sure about the gauge or any of the other information about the yarn, it's going to be hard to substitute it. So I would suggest checking out the yarn directory on Ravelry's site because it's very helpful. Every time I've looked at something, I'm always checking that just to see the information on the yarn. If they're giving a specific yarn, because sometimes vintage patterns don't give a specific yarn, they give a type and then that's it. But because this pattern gives a specific yarn, we can get a pretty good idea pretty quickly. So into what Spinnerin Marvel Twist yarn is. It's a worsted weight yarn. It came with 275 yards. 20 inches was 4 inches. 20 stitches equaled 4 inches. The needle size was 4.5 millimeter. So I'm going to guess the crochet hook size was either a 5 millimeter or a 5.5, because the crochet hook is always going to be slightly larger than the knitting needle recommended hook size. It was 100% wool, machine washable, and was marketed as a moth-resistant yarn in the 70s. The earliest Marvel Twist yarn started in the late 40s, and that yarn was not machine washable. I found another post, and this was a while ago when I first started looking at which yarn I was going to use, and I'll try to find it. I know I wrote it down when I was taking notes, but she did a blog post on all of the history of this yarn, which I found interesting. If that's not your thing, that's fine. But it was, the history of when it started in the late 40s, when it got discontinued, the marketing for the 70s, very interesting. So I'll try to find that and give it somewhere. So that's all the information that we know about the Spinnerin twist yarn. Now we're going in, if you watched my video before, which you may not have because not many people are watching these videos yet, but Lion Brand, the Lion Brand Superwash Merino was one of the few yarns that I could find that I felt were comparable that had a good selection of colors. And that was the challenging part of this. Finding something that had bright colors, because, or not even bright colors, but something other than pastels. Because I found that a lot of the wool or wool blend yarns were either like tan, gray, black, not very colorful, which isn't going to make for a very good granny square, or they just didn't feel like a material that I would want to wear as a dress. So that brings me down a long rabbit hole of searching online for a yarn. And I come across Lion Brand's Superwash Merino yarn. And I stand by, this is probably one of the few brands that I feel could be substituted for this project. And if you found something by some chance where you can prove me wrong with that, then comment and say this brand has all those colors too, but I honestly couldn't find it. I'm sure there are like websites that have, you know, plenty of yarn, like available yarns that you can get shipped to you, but I wanted to try to make it accessible. And to me, ordering it on Lion Brand in the US is accessible. And I think they even ship to Canada, like it's pretty accessible in Canada as well. So that's where I landed with that. But a little bit about the Superwash Merino. So this is I'm starting to use this skein, but this is the Superwash Merino from Lion Brand. Nice and squishy. So Lion Brand Superwash Merino has 26 colors, and the colors are beautiful. I talked a lot about the colors and all of that, but the goal of this was I wanted to do jewel toned colors. So to be honest, I wasn't 100% sure if I was gonna like this color in my combinations, but I did a square and I do. I definitely think this is a perfect color. I had my heart set on like a teal, like more of a bluish teal, but this just looked so beautiful in my opinion, next to like the navy and the burgundy and the pink. It is, and I'll show you the completed square so you can get an idea. But I do like this color, and I was a little unsure about it when I unboxed it. But so 26 colors. They say the description is soft, luxurious, and warm, and I know it's soft and I know it's luxurious, and when I wear the dress, I'll let you know about the warm, but it feels great. Like it's gonna make a wonderful wearable. I have no doubt about that. Also machine washable, safe, great. Machine wash safe, great for baby items and women's garments. So that's how they're marketing this yarn, which I could see this being great for both baby items or women's garments, or even a men's garment. I mean, I know we don't talk a whole lot about menswear and crochet, but guys like soft things too. So this is part of their special line of affordable and luxurious fibers. And this was $8.99 a skein. And I found a 35% off coupon on my purchase on Retail Me Not. And if you decide to order this yarn, I would highly suggest checking out to see if there's any coupons on there, because when I looked, there was a ton. And now Black Friday is right around the corner. Maybe they'll have a Black Friday sale, but get those coupons, sales, anything to bring the final cost of your, I would call it a habit. I know I have a yarn habit, but anything to bring that cost down is definitely worth it. It's a light 3 yarn. The crochet recommended size is a 4 millimeter. 16 single crochets with 20 rows is a 4x4 swatch. So that's pretty close to the 20 stitches equals 4 inches on the Spinnerin. And it is 280 yards, and Spinnerin was 275 yards. So that's kind of like an indicator. Sometimes when your sizes are getting close to each other. So it's a 280 yards versus 275, and your stitch gauge is relatively the same. Your needle and hook sizes are pretty close. The Lion Brand Superwash Merino knitting needle is a 4mm, and the needle size for the Spinnerin was 4.5. So we're getting very close to the type of yarn. That's going to be an indicator. Your yardage, your crochet hook size, your fiber content, all of that stuff plays into finding a good substitute. Spinnerin was 100% wool, machine washable, and this is extra fine merino wool. And superwash, I tried to find out, like, what is superwash? Superwash is the process that they put the wool through to make it a machine washable fiber. So, little history on that, because I didn't know what superwashed was. I was like, oh, what is the difference, you know? And then the care, there's a good blurb on their website about the care of this yarn. They're saying to lay flat and machine wash, but there's a whole bunch of details on like your temperature and everything right there on the website, which is nice because we want to know how to wash our items. Like, people are always asking that. How do you wash that? How are you going to wash that? When I'm done with this, I don't know that I'm going to put it in the machine just because I'm nervous. I think I might hand wash it, but we can see. If I did put it in the machine, I would always put my crocheted handmade items into a lingerie bag or laundry bag, whatever you want to call it, where it zips, and it just keeps it from like getting too much friction on whatever else you're putting in the machine. I would definitely suggest that. Maybe that's a little over the top, but I don't think so. You spend hours and hours making these items. Care for them in the washer. That's my opinion. And anybody who would buy my item, so if I made a dress for somebody and if you're gonna buy that item, it's probably gonna be an expensive item because number one, when we're doing wearables, our yarn is gonna be a little bit more expensive, and this is proof of it. This is definitely gonna be a great wearable. I paid $8.99 a skein, and when you're talking about a dress, we're talking several skeins of that. So your material cost, your time cost, that's an expensive dress. So if I were buying something handmade, I would want to make sure that I was laundering it appropriately. So whether you're making this to sell or you're making this for yourself, include the wash instructions because it's important. So all of that said, we've decided now we've got kind of like a 1-to-1 here, and we've got tons of colors. So if you go to the Lion Brand site and you type in Superwash Merino, you'll see all of those colors. There's like this poppy color I'm dying to get, and I thought the other night, I was like, oh, I think I know what I'm gonna make with that poppy color when I'm done with all this. But that's a different chapter. I'm just gonna put that off to the side. But I can see myself definitely ordering more of this yarn because so far it's been very nice. So now into my squares, I'll show you some differences. And it gives you gauge, and I would definitely suggest checking your gauge. And this, when we're making this has quite a good stretch, or what is it, negative ease, right? So it's stretchy. So when I'm doing my gauge, I'm laying flat and I'm stretching it out because when we're wearing it, it's going to stretch to fit our bodies. But yeah. And initially I started making this with a 5mm, and then because I'm always so used to going to the second, the first chain stitch in the parentheses, because usually it's 8, 10, 12, but this one is starting at 12 and saying that that's a small. So I'd say when I matched up my squares and my triangles. Okay, so this one is a 5. So this green greenish blue is what I made in a 5mm, and the pink is the 4.25. I just haven't gotten around to correcting all of it. And you can see it just hangs over one row off to the side. I'm matching it up at point by point. So that'll give you an idea of the difference. So this is the small, this is the medium, 12, 13. And I'm just gonna go through and make my triangles the 4.5. I already did it with 2 of them. I just have a few more to go. But this is what the triangles look like. And we have some negative ease. There's stretch to the yarn, which is always good for a wearable. You don't want it to be too stiff. And this is one of my completed squares. So maybe I'll show you one that doesn't have as many ends to tie in. I made this morning, so I didn't get a chance to cut my ends or anything, but this is one of the squares and it'll sit like this. And then one of these will sit like, no, I think it's like this. And then it just kind of does the bottom. So I like the way these colors turned out together. I think they look really nice. And I don't know that I'm going to make, how many of the full squares do we need? We need to make 4 of these. So I think I'm going to make 2 exactly like this, and then I'm going to switch up the order of the colors for the next 2. Just to kind of keep it interesting. And then these are just, the pattern's going to call for 8 colors. I didn't choose to do 8 colors. I thought about it. I was like, oh, maybe I should have done a light blue also. So I think a light blue would have been a nice addition, but that's fine. I picked 4 and I just did 2 rounds of those 4 colors, and I'm just going to switch up the combinations. And then I did 2 of each of the triangles. So if you were following the written pattern, you know, like instruction by instruction, you would want 8 to choose 8 colors. But if you're interested in doing it like me, I only did 4 and I just repeated my colors in my square. It's completely up to you. That's the beautiful thing about crochet, right? We can all make it a little different and we can all have a great result. So that's the difference. And then, oh, this is a square that I redid. And this is kind of like what was left of the square. Just to give, that's the difference in size between the squares, a 4.5 and a 5. But this was very nice to work with. It crocheted nicely. I didn't find that it split or anything like that when I was using a hook, and I'm just using a regular boy hook. I know sometimes I've seen where people say, depending on your hook, you're going to get a little bit more fraying. But this is a boy. Probably got it at Walmart, knowing me. I don't really buy things at special places. Like, I know I bought this yarn online, but I don't have a preference on hooks. I've always used a boy because when I started, I just started getting my stuff at Walmart. I wasn't really sure brand versus brand. I do have a Susan Bates hook. And while I like the shape of the hook, I don't like where the handle is. And I think it's all because of where I hold my crochet hook. I find I hold it a little bit higher than where the thumb impression is. It feels weird to be so far away from it, but that's just how I hold the hook. So one person can like a Susan Bates hook, and someone can use like a boy hook, and then someone else can like whatever other hook. But it's all in how you hold your yarn. I don't know that oh, here, I do have that. So this is the hook I'm talking about. This is a Susan Bates 4mm hook. And I am not getting that ergonomic too far up on the hook because of the way I'm holding it. I'm holding it here. Sometimes it slips around in my hand, and I think that's completely because of how I hold the hook. I know this is like, other people are like, oh, Susan Bates hooks are great. But I wanted to try to get like one of the sleeves that kind of add as like a grip, and you can kind of interchange it. So you don't have to keep on buying ergonomic hooks. You can just get the ergonomic sleeve. I've been looking at those. I saw them somewhere. I think I saw them at Hobby Lobby maybe a long time ago. and didn't pick it up, and now I can't find it anywhere, but I digress. So that's a little bit about the yarn I am currently using for this project. I'm using Lion Brand Superwash Merino. So, you know, this first week I kind of got my squares. I'm working towards my squares. Maybe by the end of this week I'll have everything. I'm expecting to have all of the squares done, and then we can start with construction. And I'll just try to do my best to post pictures of, like, you know, step by step. So those are, I'm keeping them in like a little bag. Not a little bag, a gallon size bag. Because I don't want them to get, you know, beat up in my bag. So they're just squares right now. I don't want to lose them. So I have them in a little bag. But shortly after, I ordered my stuff on Lion Brand. And I'm not saying I'm not happy. I'm definitely happy with my choice. I discovered that Yarn Bee, which is Hobby Lobby's yarn, has a Must Be Merino brand. And this is their teal, which is like the teal I was going after, but it definitely wouldn't have played in with my colors. But I know they had a teal, a pink, a burgundy. I think they had a gray and a black. They had a pretty good selection of colors. You wouldn't be able to do your solid, like 8 different colors with that, I don't think, unless they have more colors available online. But you could definitely, I think you could definitely do a 4. If you wanted to follow maybe something like close to what I'm doing and you didn't want to buy that, I think this could be a good sub. It's a little bit cheaper. It was $6.99 a skein. And this is actually a wool blend, I believe. Yeah, so it's 50% merino wool, 25% acrylic, and 25% nylon. The crochet hook size is a 4mm. That looks a little weird. Knitting needle is a 4.5. I usually see the hook being a little bit larger, and they're basing it on a 4x4 swatch square, so that would match this. That would match what we're testing for this. So isn't that what I said? Yeah. So for the Spinnerin, 20 stitches equals 4 inches. And for Superwash, a crochet hook at 16 single crochets by 20 rows is a 4x4 swatch. So 16 versus 20, pretty close. And then what does this say? 20 single crochets for 24 rows. So this would be a pretty good substitute if you had this available. I did a little swatch with this just to see, and this was with a 5mm crochet hook, and it was bigger than my other triangles, and it seemed a little bit more bulky, and there was a little less stretch. It still has stretch. You can see, still has stretch, but it had a little less stretch. And I think that's due to the fact that there is acrylic mixed in, and that just adds the ability to wash, I believe. So 3.5 ounces at 227 yards. So this is a little less than the comparisons that we were talking about for the Spinnerin versus Superwash Merino. But if this is what's available to you, and make sure you do a swatch and you figure it out. But I think it would be a fine substitute if that's what's available to you, because they do have pretty good colors. And I didn't want to leave them out because I know I said in my YouTube video, oh, they don't have a whole lot of colors. So I wanted to give them credit because they do have a teal. I lost the ball for this, but this is kind of like a pale seafoam blue-green, I guess. And that's what that triangle looks like. I didn't cut and tie it because I'm not gonna use it. I just wanted to show this is what that would look like. I think I'm gonna end up making a hat out of these two or something like that. So yeah, that's kind of the process and how I decide what yarn I'm going to be using for this, especially with this being a wearable. Trying to think if I let anything out, which I'm sure I'll think of as soon as I stop recording. But yeah, this is what we're doing for the first winter pattern is going to be this Crochet Granny square dress. If you want to follow along and follow my construction and everything like that, purchase the pattern, and I'm going to try to do some updates. I already have my most of my squares done, so my next update will be just kind of constructing them. Not sure if that's something that you need help with or not, but this is, I think, so far, I'm thinking this is going to be a pretty beginner-friendly pattern. Let's skip past the squares and just take a peek. So yeah, so then it goes into how you're going to join the triangles. It explains it a little bit, which is good for a beginner. And then we start talking about joining in the round. Yeah, so once you complete all of your squares and you tack them together, seam them together, then you start working in the round. I'm looking at it and I think that this could be like a nice beginner pattern. If you give yourself patience, like when you're a beginner, give yourself some patience, because when you're doing a wearable, you're going to be doing increasing and decreasing, and you're not working something flat. And for those of you who don't know, I am left-handed, so everyone thinks it's so different when you're left-handed, and it's really it's not. It's just a little bit confusing because you're watching everybody doing it right-handed. So when you're starting, it's a little confusing. But overall, it's not all that hard to do. It's not hard to do left-handed crochet. I shouldn't say that. It took me a while to teach myself because there's not a lot of people out there that kind of advertise that they're left-handed that followed my interest, I guess. There's tons of people that do tutorials that are left-handed and they do a beautiful job. But when I started getting into like garments and things like that, making sweaters, I don't know that there's a ton of left-handed crocheters out there that do that. So if you know of some, let me know. But off the top of my head, I can't think of any. I think of like Melodora Creations. I think she does right-handed and left-handed videos. Some people that are ambidextrous. I know they do a lot of shawls and stuff. But if you are interested in left-handed crochet tutorials, let me know about that too. And if you're right-handed, you can follow along as well. So I learned by right-handed people. I'm a lefty. It just took a little longer. So this is the pattern that we're doing. The first winter pattern. Crochet Granny Dress. Purchase it at Vintage Beso's Etsy shop or on her website. I didn't check specifically for this dress on her website, but I did make sure that I did kind of spot check some of them, and I did see some that I had already purchased on there. So either I think maybe she's in the process of putting that up. I'm not 100% sure, but I looked at, looks like the same price. So check her out. Purchase the pattern and follow along with me, and let's make this granny square dress. Until then, this Thursday, I'll post an update picture, and until then, I'll see you later. Bye.